After being on the brink of bankruptcy for almost a decade, in 2023, Advanced Micro Devices, AMD, made history and surpassed Intel with a $197.75 billion market cap for the first time. AMD is one of the biggest names in the technology world, having been at the forefront of innovation in the computer industry for many years. But despite its successes, AMD has been on a rollercoaster ride for over the last decade, culminating with an incredible renaissance this year. Now, the question is how AMD rose from the ashes and became a top contender in the tech industry again. In the late 1950s, America was at the forefront of technological innovation, with companies like Bell Laboratories, Texas Instruments, and Fairchild Semiconductor producing groundbreaking products like the bipolar junction transistor, integrated circuit, and MOSFET. However, engineers were cautious and wanted to strike out alone. In 1968, Robert Noyce and Gordon Moore left Fairchild Semiconductor to form NM Electronics, later renamed Intel. 8 people later set up AMD, a company headquartered in Silicon Valley, offering products with increased efficiency, stress tolerances, and speed, and complying with US military quality standards. In 1999, AMD's golden age began with the introduction of the K7 processor, branded Athlon, which marked a significant shift from being a cheap copycat option. Athlon CPUs, starting at 500 MHz, utilized the new Slot A, EV6, and a new internal system bus from DEC, surpassing Intel's 133 MHz at the time. In June 2000, the Athlon Thunderbird was introduced, known for its overclock ability and DDR RAM support. These CPUs, along with their successors, battled Intel's Pentium 4 at lower prices, but always with better performance. In September 2003, Athlon was upgraded with the K8, also known as the Athlon 64, which added a 64-bit extension to the x86 instruction set. This event is considered AMD's defining moment, as it exposed the megahertz at any cost approach of Intel's netburst architecture as a developmental dead end. Despite not reaching Intel's levels of income, AMD was filled with success and eager for more. AMD's decline in the CPU market in early 2006 was attributed to factors such as a global economy crisis, internal mismanagement, poor financial predictions, and Intel's misdeeds. AMD had a strong presence in the workstation server market, with Opteron chips outperforming Intel's Xeon processors. However, Intel's netburst architecture, which required high clock speeds and increased power consumption and heat output, was no longer competitive. Intel abandoned its development and turned to their older Pentium Pro, Pentium M CPU architecture to build a successor for the Pentium 4. This led to the Yona design for mobile platforms and the dual-core Conroe architecture for desktops in August 2006. Intel relegated the Pentium name to low-end budget models and replaced it with Core, sweeping 13 years of brand dominance away. The move to a low-power, high-throughput chip design was suited to various evolving markets, and Intel quickly took the performance crown in mainstream and enthusiast sectors. By the end of 2006, AMD had been firmly pushed from the CPU summit, but it was a disastrous managerial decision that pushed them down the slope. In 2006, AMD announced its intention to acquire ATI Technologies for $5.4 billion, a deal that represented 50% of AMD's market capitalization at the time. The deal was a significant financial gamble, as ATI was grossly overvalued due to its lack of revenue and manufacturing sites. AMD eventually acknowledged this mistake by absorbing $2.65 billion in write-downs due to overestimating ATI's goodwill valuation. Additionally, ATI's handheld graphics division, Imagen, was sold to Qualcomm for $65 million, later named Adreno, an anagram of Radeon and an integral component of the Snapdragon mobile SoC. Zillion, a 32-bit SoC for digital TV and TV cable boxes, was shipped off to Broadcom for $192.8 million. These actions highlight the company's failure to manage its assets effectively. In 2011, AMD introduced its AMD FX series processors using the Bulldozer microarchitecture, a departure from previous architectures. The microarchitecture was criticized for its performance in single-threaded workloads due to shared resources within modules, which could reduce performance when only one core was heavily utilized. This was due to the heavy multi-core approach in Bulldozer, which was not suitable for single-threaded computer programs. Additionally, the architecture needed to compete with Intel's processors in instructions per clock (IPC), but failed to match Intel's performance in the performance per watt metric. AMD's Bobcat, an update into the Jaguar architecture, was selected by Microsoft and Sony to power the Xbox One and PlayStation 4 in 2013. Despite slim profit margins, both platforms sold millions, showcasing AMD's ability to create custom SoCs. AMD continued revising the Bulldozer design over the years, with Piledriver and the final version, Excavator, focusing on reducing power consumption. The naming structure for CPUs became confusing, leading AMD to abandon the Phenom nomenclature and label their Excavator desktop CPUs as the A series. The graphics section of the company fielding the Radeon products had mixed fortunes. AMD retained the ATI brand name until 2010 and rewrote the GPU architecture created by ATI in late 2011 with the release of Graphics Core Next, GCN. GCN processors grew to have immense compute performance, but the structure wasn't easy to get the best out of it. Radeon products were known for being hot, noisy, and power-hungry, with the initial iteration of GCN requiring over 200 watts of power at full load. By the end of 2016, AMD's balance sheet had taken a loss for 4 consecutive years, and debt was still high, even with the sale of foundries and other branches. In 2012, AMD faced a significant challenge in the semiconductor industry, with no large investments coming to save them. To revive the company, they hired 2 key figures: former lead architect Jim Keller and Lisa Su. Keller led 2 projects, an ARM-based design for server markets and a standard x86 architecture, with Mike Clark as the chief architect. Su, who had been senior vice president and general manager at Freescale Semiconductors, was credited with driving AMD's move into markets beyond the PC, especially consoles. Intel continued to grow, posting revenue of almost $60 billion at the end of 2016. Intel had been following a tick-tock approach to processor development, with a tick being a new architecture and a tock being a process refinement. However, Intel's core architecture and fabrication process nodes had matured nicely, and at the end of 2016, they posted a revenue of almost $60 billion. Despite Intel's success, AMD had been quietly building a winning set of cards and played their hand at the annual E3 event in February 2016. They revealed the completely new Zen architecture, which focused on keeping pipelines as busy as possible. This required significant improvements to the pipeline and cache systems, dropping the sharing of L1 or L2 caches as used in Bulldozer. The Ryzen CPU, a system on a chip, was also a system on a chip, lacking a GPU. The die was sectioned into 2 CPU complexes, CCX, each of which was 4-core, 8-thread. The CPU offered controllers and links for PCI Express, SATA, and USB, allowing motherboards to be made without an SB. However, AMD had to prove its performance in this area after years of playing second fiddle to Intel. A month after the first Ryzen CPUs hit the market, came 6 and 4-core Ryzen 5 models, followed by 4-core Ryzen 3 chips. These chips performed against Intel's offerings in the same manner as their larger brothers, but were significantly more cost-effective. In the space of 6 months, AMD showed that they were effectively targeting every x86 desktop market possible with a single, one-size-fits-all design. In 2017, AMD introduced the Zen microarchitecture, the first high-performance CPU architecture in over a decade. This marked AMD's first release of a high-performance CPU architecture, offering processors at lower prices for competitive performance. The Zen and Radeon GPUs solidified AMD's position in the gaming market, with its processors and graphics cards often used in high-performance gaming PCs. AMD has partnered with major game developers to optimize hardware for popular games. In addition to technology products, AMD is committed to sustainability and corporate social responsibility, implementing initiatives to reduce environmental impact and improve working conditions at its facilities. Today, AMD is a leading global technology solutions provider with a diverse product portfolio and strong presence in various markets. The company continues to innovate and push the boundaries of microprocessors, graphics processing, and data center and enterprise solutions. AMD currently holds a 36.4% and 16% market share for desktop CPUs and GPUs, powering NASA's Mars Perseverance Land Rover, Tesla Model 3 and Y 5G cell towers, and the world's fastest supercomputer, Frontier. AMD, a leading company in the design of advanced microprocessors, has made significant strides since reducing capital expenditure and moving away from manufacturing. Intel, on the other hand, doubled down on manufacturing last year, committing $20 billion for new fabs in Arizona and up to $100 billion in Ohio for the world's largest chip-making complex. However, these projects are still years away from being completed. AMD's Zen line of CPUs, first released in 2017, is often seen as the key to the company's recent success, as it saved AMD from near bankruptcy. AMD's EPYC family of CPUs, including its latest product, Genoa, has made significant strides on the data center side, with customers including Amazon Web Services, Google Cloud, Oracle, IBM, and Microsoft Azure. AMD's revenue more than tripled between 2017 and 2021, growing from $5.3 billion to over $16 billion, while Intel's annual revenue increased about 25% from $63 billion in 2017 to $79 billion last year. Intel's slow progress on the client side and its failure to move forward fast enough have contributed to AMD's success in the data center sector. The PlayStation 5 has sold 60.16 million units in 44 months, while the Xbox Series X/S sold 29.64 million units, each featuring an AMD unified processor, contributing to the growth of the Electronics and Entertainment System (EES) revenue. However, AMD can make a profit on EPYC server processors, while Microsoft and Sony sell consoles at a loss, recouping the money through game licensing fees. This results in smaller margins for the chips in those machines. AMD also faces issues with its perceived image, as the Intel Inside catchphrase and jingle have been used for over 30 years. System makers like Dell, HP, and Lenovo need to sell more units with AMD processors. AMD, once a conservative company, has made significant strides in CPU technology and parallel processing performance, forcing Intel to accelerate its own designs. However, the company's recent financial statements suggest that it may return to the dark days of dismal products and no money. Despite 2021 being AMD's best ever year for revenue and net income, the company still has $16.4 billion of revenue, behind NVIDIA, $26.9 billion, and light years away from Intel, $79 billion. To grow, AMD needs to take revenue from Intel and NVIDIA, as well as expand into new markets. The company's computing and graphics segment, including Ryzen and Radeon sales, will continue to improve. AMD, despite the COVID pandemic's cryptocurrency boom and demand for computing devices, is currently in the strongest position in 51 years. Its market cap is 5% lower than Intel's, and AMD is weathering the storm better than Intel. The company's ambitious Zen project shows no signs of hitting any limits soon, making its Phoenix-like rebirth a tremendous success. Although not at the top of the mountain yet, it's possible that this is for the better. A healthy and competitive AMD, fully able to meet Intel and NVIDIA head-on, brings benefits to users and investors alike. Share your thoughts on AMD and its trials and tribulations, such as owning a K6 chip, Athlon, your favorite Radeon graphics card, and a Zen-based processor.